Terrence texted in and asked me I heard about this thing called the SAVE Act. I don't know why I'm laughing. Nothing is funny. Everything needs to be taken seriously. But like they're testing the bounds of the absurd. And I never thought the federal government could ever stoop to such a really low level. My colleague Kristen Bry, she wrote an editorial in the Journal Sentinel earlier this week regarding the SAVE Act, and I just kind of dismissed it. Maybe I shouldn't have. And so Terrence texted in a screenshot that says, "Hey, married women that took your husband's last name. This just passed the House and is expected to pass the Senate. Republicans just took away your right to vote. Are you awake yet?" And the description says the SAVE Act has passed the House and is heading to the Senate. If you're one of the 83% of married women in this country that has taken your husband's last name, this will take away your right to vote. In this law, if your driver's license, passport, etc., does not match your birth certificate, you are not eligible to vote. This is part of Project 2025 that we were screaming about. Contact your senators. This must not pass. So in a preliminary gander at some information regarding the SAVE Act, no, the SAVE Act is not designed to disenfranchise women. Congressional Republicans recently reintroduced the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act, for the 119th Congress, brought forward by Representative Chip Roy, a Republican from Texas, in the House, and Senator Mike Lee, a Republican from Utah, in the Senate. The SAVE Act establishes new citizenship verification requirements for Americans registering to vote. Although data shows that non-citizen voting is quite rare, more robust citizenship verification is a wildly popular reform that may help increase trust in elections if implemented well. With Republicans preparing to move the bill out of the House in the near future, opponents allege that the bill will disenfranchise millions of married women and others whose names on their birth certificates no longer match their current legal names. While the bill does need refining to address implementation concerns and would benefit from placing more administrative burdens on state agencies rather than voters, this particular attack is a red herring. As introduced, the SAVE Act requires Americans to prove citizenship through a variety of possible documents, such as state IDs that show citizenship or a passport. Birth certificates may be the most accessible options for many Americans. However, many American voters have changed their names since birth, whether by marriage or by personal choice, leading to a mismatch between their birth certificate and the current photo ID required alongside it. The bill does not provide a specific process for those whose current legal name does not match their birth certificate, though it does contemplate such a scenario and mandates the creation of a process to prevent affected citizens from disenfranchisement. So as the bill stands right now, yeah, they could challenge your right to vote, married ladies that took your husband's name. I was always skeptical of women that didn't take their husband's name when they got married. Are you trying to pretend like you're not married, ladies? Now I understand why. In Section 2F of the bill, under process in the case of certain discrepancies in documentation, the SAVE Act tasks the Election Assistance Commission with creating guidance and states with creating a process under which an applicant can provide such additional documentation in the event of a discrepancy with respect to the applicant's documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. So in trying to prevent an almost non-existent group of non-citizens from voting, they are making married women carry the burden. Married women and local election officials now carry the burden of establishing somebody's citizenship. Let me tell you why this is a bad idea. On a Wednesday show, or was it Tuesday show? It was Tuesday show. We had an election on Tuesday. Don't worry if you didn't know that, because most of y'all didn't vote in it anyway. There was a man who presented his state ID. He's a veteran. He called in or texted in earlier this week on Tuesday on Election Day and said that the poll worker gave him a hard time when he showed his state ID in order to be able to cast his ballot in Tuesday's primary election because his state ID has maple leaves on it. And I'm over here thinking that the brother's Canadian. Well, apparently, the new state IDs in Wisconsin and the new driver's licenses have maple leaves on them. And the the lady, what do you call the lady? The poll worker, didn't recognize the state ID. And imagine if the SAVE Act as written goes into effect, someone whose name does not match their voter registration records, because you might be a registered voter, get married, change your name, show up with your ID or have a different name, your maiden name in the poll book, and they may not allow you to vote. I have a feeling that while that might be an unintended consequence, there might be some intention to preventing women from voting. For example, of how this might play out in practice, look no further than the state of Arizona, the only state that requires a citizenship check for participation in state and local elections. Under Arizona law, a voting applicant may provide citizenship by providing, quote, a legible photocopy of the applicant's birth certificate that verifies citizenship to the satisfaction of the county recorder. Applicants with a name mismatch must provide supplementary documentation, such as your marriage certificate, to resolve the discrepancy. Imagine having to bring your marriage certificate to go and vote, ladies. Ladies here, bottom line, don't get married. Just don't get married, ladies. Save yourself the trouble. Y'all hate us men anyway, so don't get married and then you won't have any problems voting. Applicants with name mismatches must provide supplementary documentation such as a marriage certificate to resolve the discrepancy at the polling location. Though specific requirements contained in the SAVE Act and Arizona law differ, including the acceptability of a photocopy, both envision a process in which applicants provide supplementary documentation to support a mismatched birth certificate, and both grant election administrators discretion to figure out the specifics. So, ladies, if you have a name mismatch from your ID and your voter registration, it is now up to one of those old biddies working at the polling location to determine your eligibility to vote, even if you are a born American citizen. Like many pieces of legislation introduced in the run-up to an election, the SAVE Act may have been more of a messaging tool than a robust election reform. As a result, the bill contains some meaningful implementation hurdles that would have to be addressed before enactment. And then we got a PolitiFact here. So under the SAVE Act, it says via PolitiFact, if you are a woman that has changed your name from your birth certificate, let's say through marriage, you are no longer eligible to vote. So PolitiFact rates that as mostly false. Not completely false. Not pants on fire, because that's the highest form of lie on the PolitiFact meter. Mostly false. SAVE Act would make it harder, not impossible, for married people to register to vote. People whose names don't match on identified documents may have a hard time registering and voting if the SAVE Act becomes law. The bill requires states to establish processes to address discrepancies in documents. So this would be a problem, because in the state of Wisconsin, where we've got a Republican-controlled state assembly and state senate, I don't think that they would make it easy for women to vote here in the state of Wisconsin. I mean, think about where some of the Republicans stand on women's reproductive health care, and even on things like the Planned Parenthood. If a married person who takes a spouse's last name would have to provide more documentation than other individuals to prove citizenship. So I'm seeing this automatically as a violation of the 14th Amendment, equal protections. Congressional Republicans are pushing to pass a bill that would require documentary proof of citizenship to register to vote. The move worries voting rights advocates, saying it would hinder registration among eligible citizens, particularly married women. The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act, would set federal standards for voter registration. The bill lists documents people could use to prove their citizenship when registering to vote, such as a birth certificate or a passport. The bill's text makes no mention of a marriage certificate or an official name change document. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, a left-leaning voting rights advocacy group, more than 21 million voting-age American citizens, or 9% of eligible voters, don't have ready access to documents that can prove their citizenship. That would decide an election. 9% of eligible voters, 21 million people, do not have access to documents that can prove that they're a citizen. Thank you, Terrence, for bringing this up. This is one of those things that I probably would have ignored because the Trump administration and these Republicans are throwing so many damn things at us. It's hard to pay attention to all of them. Something like this getting through without the American people paying attention will have an impact on the midterm elections in 2026. Absolutely it will. Take a break, come back, and I'll read some more of your text messages on the other side. Our phone number is 833-212-1017, 833-212-1017. The Truth with Sherwin Hughes. We'll be right back.